She covered her aunt's shift at the hotel and was mistaken for a VIP guest by a millionaire. Before we start, comment below where you are watching from. I would love to know how far our stories are reaching, and if you love emotional love stories full of overcoming challenges, please subscribe to the channel. I have a goal to reach 1,000 subscribers. Besides not missing any new stories, you will also help the channel grow and bring even more special content for you. The sun was gilding the afternoon sky in Charleston, coloring the old mansions and cobblestone streets with a warm and nostalgic light. The hot breeze carried the sweet scent of magnolias and the distant sea. Inside the historic Whitmore Hotel, an imposing building with white columns and velvety carpet, Isabella Martinez, or simply Bella, quickly tied her dark brown hair into a makeshift bun. Everything had happened very quickly. Her Aunt Rosa, a housekeeper at the hotel for over 20 years, had called that morning with a hoarse and trembling voice. "Mi amor, can you do me this favor? Just today, I'm feeling very sick." Without hesitation, Bella rushed to help her. She knew how important the job was to her aunt. She just did not expect that upon arriving, she would be directed to the hotel's noble wing, unknowingly wearing a more elegant uniform left mistakenly in a closet. A pearl gray dress that, against her light brown skin and hazel eyes, gave her an almost noble appearance. The lobby was bustling in preparation for the opening of the restored wing. Wealthy guests, investors, and political figures walked among opulent floral arrangements and impeccably polished period furniture. Bella's heart pounded hard, fearing she might make a mistake. She walked while discreetly looking down, trying not to draw attention. That was when everything changed. As she turned the main hallway, she lightly bumped into a tall man with an elegant posture. He wore a flawless navy blue suit, and his carefully styled dark blonde hair matched his intense grayish-blue eyes so well that Bella had to look away for a moment. "Sorry," Bella mumbled, trying to quickly move away. But the man smiled surprisingly warmly and stopped her with a gentle gesture. "No, it was my fault," he said, his voice deep and polished. "Are you here for tonight's event? It's a pleasure to finally meet you, miss." Bella hesitated, confused. She thought about explaining, but the words got lost when she realized the mistake. Maybe it was the dress, or maybe the tired look he mistook for discreet sophistication. The fear of harming her aunt tightened her chest like an invisible chain. "Martinez," she replied softly, her cheeks burning. "Martinez, beautiful name," he said, studying her with genuine interest. "I'm Ethan Whitmore." He extended his hand, and Bella hesitantly shook it. His hand was firm, but his touch was surprisingly gentle, almost respectful. For a moment, Bella felt transported to a world she had never imagined belonging to. A world of halls lit by crystal chandeliers and restrained laughter between champagne glasses. "I hope you had a good trip," Ethan continued. "Charleston has its charm, although today is a bit too hot." He gave a light laugh, almost disconcerting in its naturalness. Bella timidly smiled, not knowing what to say. Her mind spun between the fear of being discovered and the strange feeling that, for the first time in a long while, someone looked at her without judgment or superiority. "If you need anything, I'm at your service," Ethan added, slightly bowing his head before walking off to speak with other guests. Bella stood there, her heart racing, watching him disappear among the men in suits and women dressed like they had stepped out of a luxury magazine. Her knees weakened slightly, and she had to discreetly lean on one of the nearby antique armchairs. That night, without knowing how, she was invited to the gala dinner honoring the hotel's VIP investors. Her name, for some reason, was on the guest list. Maybe a mistake, maybe a push from fate, or maybe a silent trap already setting itself in her path. As she adjusted the dress that was not hers and tried to contain the wave of anxiety threatening to overwhelm her, Bella looked at her reflection in the large golden mirror in the hallway. "I don't belong here," she whispered to herself, her eyes shining with the anguish of someone who knows they are living a dream that could collapse at any moment. But even with the fear pounding in her chest, she knew she could not turn back. For her aunt, for her family, for herself. And, unintentionally, on that hot afternoon in Charleston, Bella had taken the first step toward a love and hardship story that would change her life forever. The old clock in the main hall of the Whitmore Hotel marked 5:45 in the afternoon when Bella, with trembling hands, adjusted the pearl gray dress she wore. The light fabric hugged her body elegantly, highlighting her light brown skin and the contrast of her hazel brown eyes, which at that moment were filled with anxiety. The lobby gleamed under the soft light of the crystal chandeliers. The discreet scent of white flowers filled the air as important guests and investors arrived for the hotel's revitalization event. Men in tailored suits spoke in low voices. Women in silk dresses displayed carefully practiced smiles. Bella took a deep breath. Every step on the marble floor seemed to echo louder than it should. She did not want to draw attention. Her plan was simple: cover her aunt's shift, deliver a few welcome kits to the rooms, and quietly disappear. But the confusion with the uniforms seemed to announce an imminent disaster. As she passed near the grand curved staircase, her eyes met his again. Ethan Whitmore. He was talking with two imposing-looking gentlemen, but the moment he saw Bella, his gaze locked onto her as if nothing else existed in that room full of important people. Ethan was the perfect image of the modern Southern air. Tall, broad-shouldered, his dark blonde hair slightly tousled as if the afternoon breeze had played with it, but in a naturally charming way. The light stubble framed his strong-featured face, and his grayish-blue eyes had an intensity that seemed to pierce through any barrier. Bella tried to look away, but he was already approaching, breaking off the conversation he had been having with the other men. "Excuse me, gentlemen," Ethan said with a quick smile, heading straight for her. Bella froze, her heart racing as he walked toward her, seeming oblivious to the elegant murmur around them. "Miss Martinez, right?" he asked, his voice low and firm, carrying that typical Southern gentleman politeness. She blinked, not knowing how to respond. She had no idea how her name had reached his lips. Maybe it was on the support staff list for the event? Or had someone mistaken her for a Latin investor? "Yes," she murmured, the word coming out so small it was barely audible. Ethan smiled, and there was something more than simple courtesy in that smile. It was as if he saw in her a promise of something new, a genuine soul among the superficiality of the world he knew. "It is an honor to have you here with us. Your support for the revitalization project is invaluable," he said, slightly bowing his head, a gesture of respect that made Bella's stomach churn. She should have corrected him. She should have told the truth, explained everything. But when she imagined Aunt Rosa being reprimanded, maybe even fired, for the confusion, Bella felt her throat close up. The fear of injustice, of poverty knocking once again at her door, weighed heavier than her conscience at that moment. She only smiled, a shy smile, and lowered her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered, even knowing that every word she left unsaid was weaving an invisible trap around her. "Come," Ethan said, offering his arm naturally. "I want to introduce you to the other investors. I am sure your presence will make the night even more special." Bella hesitated for just a second that seemed like an eternity, where guilt, fear, and hope mixed in her chest like a whirlwind. With the tips of her trembling fingers, she accepted Ethan's arm, feeling the warm texture of the expensive suit fabric under her hand. As they crossed the room under the attentive gazes of everyone, Bella felt the weight of 100 eyes on her back. Some curious, others cold as sharp blades. "You seem nervous," Ethan commented in an almost playful tone, leaning closer to whisper near her ear. "A little," she admitted, her voice choked with tension. "Do not worry," he said, smiling again. "Today is a celebration, and you, Miss Martinez, are one of the stars of the night." Bella smiled back, a smile that hid the storm inside her. With each step, she knew she was stepping into a world that was not hers, a world where one mistake could cost more than just a job. It could destroy the little stability her family had managed to build. And yet, there was a part of her, small and full of dreams, that wished, even if only for one night, to belong to that world. Without realizing it, Bella was throwing herself towards something that would change her life forever. And the night was just beginning. Bella was still trying to control her breathing as she was guided by Ethan through the hotel lobby. The grand room now felt like a golden trap, with its gleaming columns and heavy curtains shaping the space where she moved, like a misplaced piece on a lavish chessboard. She could feel the heat of the stairs weighing down on her skin, looks of curiosity, judgment, and even open contempt. Ethan, however, seemed oblivious to it all. His smile was sincere, his gaze kind. As they neared the main entrance, he turned to her, his grayish-blue eyes shining under the golden light of the sunset streaming through the hotel's stained glass windows. "Would you like to accompany me tonight to the welcome dinner?" he asked, leaning slightly toward her with a courtesy so natural it seemed impossible to refuse. Bella hesitated. Every cell in her body screamed for her to run. She knew that invitation was not meant for her. She was not an investor, not a lady of society, not even a legitimate guest. She was a housekeeper, terrified of being discovered with every passing second. I don't know if I should," she whispered, her voice faltering as her fingers involuntarily gripped the seam of her dress. Ethan smiled, not noticing the hidden panic in her words. "Please," he insisted, with a gentleness that almost broke her resolve. "Your perspective is valuable to us. The city, the hotel, we are trying to create something everyone can be proud of. Your opinion would be an honor." Bella felt the knot in her throat tighten. If she refused, she would draw attention. If she accepted, she would sink even deeper into the lies she never wanted to tell. And there was also the fear, silent, dark, that any wrong move could cost Aunt Rosa her job. With a heavy heart, she forced a small smile and said, "I would love to." Ethan's expression immediately lit up, as if a worry had just been lifted. "Perfect. The dinner will be in the Magnolia Room at 7. I'll take care of everything." Before Bella could regret it, he was already hurrying toward a group of men who looked eager to speak with him. Alone in the middle of the lobby, Bella felt the floor beneath her feet grow unstable. She took a deep breath, trying to find steadiness where there was none. She needed to prepare herself. She needed, at the very least, to appear like she belonged to that world. At exactly 7 o'clock, Bella entered the Magnolia Room. The setting was breathtaking. Crystal chandeliers reflecting the candle flames, tables covered in immaculate white linen, silverware polished to a blinding shine. A string quartet played softly in the corner, filling the room with gentle classical music. The moment she crossed the doorway, all eyes turned to her. Men and women dressed in formal attire, wrapped in expensive perfumes and old secrets, observed her as if she were an intruder. Some women whispered behind champagne glasses, their eyes sliding over Bella like sharp knives. There was something in the way they wrinkled their noses, in their falsely polite smiles that pierced the invisible armor Bella tried so hard to wear. "Who is she?" whispered a young blonde in an emerald dress, her voice just loud enough for Bella to catch the disdain. "Some random Latina who must have played her cards right," answered another, laughing with cruel undertones. Bella pretended not to hear. She straightened her shoulders, feeling the thin fabric of the dress cling to her skin, damp with nervousness. Every step she took was a battle against the urge to flee that opulent room where she clearly was not welcome. Spotting her, Ethan crossed the room in just a few strides. His genuine smile was like a lifeline thrown into a turbulent sea. "You look wonderful," he said, with a sincerity that made Bella's face immediately flush. "Thank you," she murmured, lowering her gaze. He offered his arm once again, and she accepted it, fully aware of the burning stares at her back like live embers. During the dinner, Bella remained mostly silent, politely smiling and listening to conversations about million-dollar businesses, investment funds, and expansion projects. Every word sounded like a foreign language, a reality so far from the life she knew. And yet, here she was, pretending to belong. She felt like an imposter, increasingly suffocated by the trap she had unintentionally helped weave. When one of the guests, a gray-haired man with cold eyes, made a comment about the danger of mixing business with charity. His gaze slowly slid toward her, as if the phrase had been aimed directly at her. Bella bit the inside of her cheek, fighting back the tears of humiliation that threatened to rise. Ethan, noticing the tension, gently placed his hand over hers, beneath the table. "Ignore them," he said in a murmur that was almost a plea. "They are afraid of anything that is different." Bella took a deep breath, absorbing those words like a fragile shield, ready to shatter at any moment. She knew she could not hide forever, that sooner or later the truth would come knocking. And in that cruel world, honesty was not always enough to prevent a fall. But for now, all she could do was smile, lift her chin, and keep fighting not to be swallowed alive by the elite surrounding her. Deep down, something whispered that this night would change not only her destiny, but also Ethan Whitmore's, and the price of that change would be high, much higher than Bella could ever imagine. The soft music of the string quartet filled the room as the dinner progressed, creating an ethereal backdrop for the succession of delicately served dishes. Bella, seated next to Ethan at the main table, felt every fiber of her body tense, as if she could be exposed and dragged out of that luxurious world at any moment. Despite her fears, there was something about Ethan that made the weight in her chest lighten. He did not talk business with her. He did not treat her like a trophy or a piece to be displayed. Instead, he seemed genuinely interested in the person she was. Or rather, the person he believed she was. As the waiter served the main course, Ethan leaned in slightly, distancing himself from the superficial conversations around them. "I hope you are enjoying yourself," he said in a low tone, as if it were a secret just between them. Bella looked at him, her hazel brown eyes shining under the golden candlelight. She forced a smile, but guilt was already starting to wrap around her chest like suffocating ivy. "Everything is very beautiful," she replied, her voice nearly breaking. Ethan smiled more openly, his eyes softening. "'Tis rare to meet someone so genuine," he commented, discreetly running the napkin between his fingers. "Most people here are always trying to impress. You are not. You are different." Bella looked away, pretending to adjust the edge of the napkin on her lap. She wanted to scream that she was not who he thought she was, that she did not belong there, that everything was a big mistake. But the words would not come. Fear paralyzed her just as much as the secret desire to live, even for just one night, the illusion of being someone else. "Sometimes it is better to be simple," she said, the words slipping out before she could stop them. Ethan looked at her as if he had just heard something extraordinary, as if simplicity were a lost treasure in a world full of masks. "That is exactly what I miss," he confessed, his voice sounding hoarse with contained emotion. "Simplicity, truth." A waiter discreetly approached with a bottle of expensive wine, but Ethan declined with a nod, turning his full attention back to Bella. "Where are you from?" he asked with genuine curiosity. Bella hesitated. She could not reveal too much. She could not say she had grown up in the working-class neighborhoods on the outskirts of Charleston, where daily struggles shaped character long before any diploma. "I am from here," she answered carefully, "but from a simple place." Ethan smiled as if that only deepened his admiration. Bella saw something change in his eyes, as if a silent decision had been made. For the rest of the dinner, Ethan did not stray from her. He steered clear of political conversations and investment debates to ask her opinions about the city, about how she saw Charleston's tradition balancing with modernization. Bella answered with the honesty she carried in her blood, even while fearing that one misplaced word could betray her. Between shy responses and laughter, they shared moments together. Ethan, used to flattery and hollow answers, seemed disarmed by her frankness, and Bella, caught between fear and hope, felt more alive than she had in a long time. But deep down, the weight of the lie pulsed quietly, like a pain she tried to ignore. She knew that the more he became enchanted, the greater the disappointment would be. When the dinner ended and the room filled with plastic smiles and calculated goodbyes, Ethan turned to her, his hands tucked casually into his jacket pockets, a gesture that made him seem even more human in her eyes. "Would you like to take a walk with me?" he asked. "The night is beautiful." Bella bit her lower lip, her heart at war. Every second by his side pulled her closer to an abyss she would eventually have to face. She started but stopped. His eyes were too hopeful, and she, tired of rejecting life, tired of hiding in the shadows, simply nodded. Yes. Ethan's smile lit up like the first ray of sunlight after a long night. Unknowingly, Bella walked side by side with the man who would change her destiny. But also, without realizing, she planted the seeds of a pain that one day would cost too much. And the illusion, beautiful and treacherous, was only just beginning to form around them. The night in Charleston seemed like it had been lifted from a living painting. The cobblestone streets, worn by time and stories, glowed softly under the golden light of the old wrought-iron street lamps. The historic mansions, with their ornate balconies and creeping vines that clung to the walls like ancient memories, stood as silent witnesses to Bella and Ethan's hurried steps along the Battery Promenade. The salty breeze from the Atlantic played with Bella's dark brown hair, while the pearl-gray dress fluttered delicately around her legs. She could feel the warmth of Ethan's presence beside her, a warmth that came not just from the mild night air, but from the intensity with which he seemed to see her. Not like the others had looked at her in the ballroom, but as if he saw something beyond her appearance. Ethan carried his jacket casually slung over one shoulder, his tie loosened and the collar of his white shirt open. His face, under the yellowish glow of the lampposts, revealed traces of weariness and sincerity that were usually hidden behind the mask of the flawless businessman. "You know," he said suddenly, his voice low like a confession stolen by the wind, "sometimes I look at everything I have achieved and wonder, what for?" Bella turned her face toward him, her heart tightening in her chest. The raw vulnerability in his words caught her off guard, like a blast of cold wind on a warm day. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice coming out softer than she intended. Ethan let out a short, bitter laugh, kicking a small stone along the path with the tip of his leather shoe. "Money, hotels, parties, dinners, it all feels so empty." He ran his hand through his hair, a nervous gesture that clashed with his usual image of control. "People come close, but I never know if it is for me or for what I represent." His words echoed inside Bella, as if describing the loneliness she herself felt, even though from such a different world. She stopped for a moment, looking out at the dark stretch of ocean ahead of them, where the waves lazily broke against the seawall. "Sometimes," Bella began, swallowing hard, "the people who shine the brightest on the outside are the ones carrying the most shadows inside." Ethan looked at her, his grayish-blue eyes narrowing as if trying to decipher her words. A sad smile curved his lips. "Maybe that's why I feel so good around you," he said, his voice thick with an emotion he himself seemed not to fully understand. "You're different, Bella. You're real." Bella closed her eyes for a second, fighting the flood of guilt that threatened to overflow. This was it. This was the moment. She had to tell him. She could not let him sink even deeper into the illusion that, with every word, became more dangerous. Gathering courage, she took a deep breath and opened her mouth. "Ethan, I need to tell you something," she began, feeling her heart race as if it would break through her ribs. But before she could finish the sentence, a sharp sound tore through the night. Her cell phone. Bella pulled the device from her purse with trembling fingers. The name flashing on the screen, Aunt Rosa, seemed to pulse along with the panic that immediately seized her. She answered almost without thinking. "Hello?" she said, her voice broken by urgency. On the other end, her aunt's neighbor's desperate voice came through the line, muffled by the sounds of sirens in the background. "Bella, your aunt, she fainted again. She's being taken to the hospital right now. You need to come quickly." The ground beneath her feet seemed to vanish. The street, the lights, the sound of the waves, everything became a blurry mess, while her mind focused only on the image of her fragile aunt struggling to breathe. "I'm coming," she said, almost voiceless, ending the call with frozen fingers. Ethan, noticing the immediate change in her expression, quickly stepped closer. "Bella, what happened?" he asked, his eyes wide with concern. She tried to speak, but her throat closed up, only allowing her to murmur, "My aunt, she's very sick. I have to go now." Without hesitation, Ethan pulled his car keys from his pocket and raised them. "I'll take you. Let's go." Bella hesitated for the briefest of seconds, knowing that accepting his help would only entangle her further in the web of lies already suffocating her. But fear, desperation, and love for the woman who had raised her were stronger. She just nodded. Within minutes, they were in a black SUV, speeding through Charleston's quiet streets. Ethan drove with steady hands on the wheel, casting worried glances at her from time to time, while Bella clung to her seatbelt as if it could somehow ward off the disaster she already sensed. The sound of the tires against the asphalt seemed to scream inside her head. The city, with its dreamlike mansions and blooming gardens, passed by like a blurred sequence of a movie. She could not pause. Inside her, something cracked, a deep fear that even if she managed to save her aunt, she might have already lost the chance to save the truth between herself and Ethan. And as the hospital appeared on the horizon with its cold, menacing lights, Bella knew that the night, which had started like a golden dream, was about to turn into the cruelest of awakenings. The harsh hospital lights seemed more severe than ever as Bella waited, sitting on a hard plastic chair in the white, silent hallway. With each passing minute, her body curled more inward, as if she could disappear into herself. Ethan stood silently beside her, his eyes fixed on the emergency room door, asking no questions she was not ready to answer. The doctor finally appeared, his face serious behind a light blue mask. "She's going to be fine, but she needs complete rest," he informed, glancing briefly at Bella, who let out a breath of relief, her legs nearly giving out from so much tension. Ethan guided her to the waiting area without saying anything, just placing a hand on her back with a touch that was both comforting and painful for Bella. There, in the silence broken only by distant voices and the hum of medical equipment, she promised herself she would tell the truth as soon as she found the strength. But fate was already plotting against her. While Bella struggled with her guilt and silent promises, Claire Henderson, Ethan's personal assistant, did not see the whole story through such gentle eyes. Claire was known behind the scenes of the Whitmore businesses for being loyal, sharp, and suspicious. With the keen instincts of someone raised among corporate betrayals, she did not believe in perfect coincidences. Sitting in her office at the hotel, Claire reviewed reports and guest lists on her laptop. Something about Bella's sudden appearance had set off her instincts for trouble. She investigated discreetly, cross-referencing information, check-in records, and employee histories. It did not take long to find what she was looking for. Bella Martinez was not a guest. She was a housekeeper who, for some still unknown reason, was circulating as a VIP guest among the investors and strategic partners of the Whitmore family. Claire hesitated for a moment. She knew Ethan seemed genuinely interested in the young woman. She also knew that exposing it publicly would be devastating. But above all, she felt it was her duty to protect the family's name and fortune. And so she sent a single fatal email to a well-known local gossip columnist using a pseudonym, the Great Whitmore Hotel Scam. The next morning, the entire city woke up to the news spreading like wildfire through local newspapers and social media. The headline was ruthless: Bella Martinez, the housekeeper who fooled the Prince of Charleston. Bella, still at the hospital, woke up to her phone vibrating incessantly. Messages from strangers, headlines flashing on the screen, notifications popping up like bombs. When she opened one of them, she felt the blood drain from her face plastered everywhere, her name exposed, her origins thrown into the mud for everyone's entertainment. Ethan received the news shortly after. He was in the hospital lobby when Claire, her face pale and worried, handed him the tablet showing the headline. He read it in silence, his jaw clenching so tightly that his muscles trembled. The ground seemed to open up beneath his feet. The memories of the night before, the looks, the sincere words, the gentle touch of her hand, all mixed now with the suffocating feeling of betrayal. "She lied to me," he murmured, more to himself than to Claire. Bella, stepping out of the hospital ward to get some fresh air, found Ethan at the hospital exit, still holding the tablet. His gaze, once so warm, was now pure ice. "So that's what this was," he said, his voice low, cutting like a blade. "You played me. You played all of us." Bella tried to step closer, the tears already welling in her hazel brown eyes. "Ethan, please listen to me. I never meant to deceive anyone. It was a mistake. I tried." He raised a hand, cutting off any explanation. "You tried," he repeated bitterly. "Tried what?" "To climb your way up. To use my name to escape your reality." Bella felt her face burn with shame, but she stood her ground, even with her heart breaking apart. "I never wanted anything from you, Ethan. She swallowed hard, her voice choked. "I just wanted to protect my aunt. It was all a misunderstanding." But Ethan, hurt and proud, could no longer hear her. "I do not want to hear any more excuses," he said, his grayish-blue eyes hardened. "Stay away from me and from my world." Without giving her a chance to say anything else, he turned his back and disappeared into the hospital entrance, leaving Bella alone under the pale morning sky, surrounded by the cruel voices of her own fears. And at that moment, Bella knew she had lost something precious. Not just Ethan's trust, but perhaps the chance at something that could have been real. But fate, she would learn, was not done with them yet. The stifling heat of the Charleston morning seemed to weigh even heavier on Bella's shoulders as she left the hospital, her body exhausted and her soul in ruins. Every step she took toward the street felt like dragging invisible chains. Her cell phone, once a silent tool, vibrated incessantly inside the pocket of the simple purse she carried. Each notification a new blow, a new judgment. The historic streets, with their centuries-old trees and colonial houses, now felt distant, as if they had become part of a world Bella would never belong to. As she walked toward the bus station, Ethan's cold words still echoed in her ears. "Stay away from me and from my world." On the bus, curious stares pierced her like needles. Some passengers whispered discreetly, clutching their phones. Bella lowered her head, her face partially hidden by the dark brown waves of hair falling over her shoulders. Each camera click, each whisper was another brick added to the wall of humiliation closing around her. When she arrived home, a small, faded front house in a working-class neighborhood, she found Aunt Rosa sitting in the old armchair in the living room, her eyes swollen from crying. The television was on, tuned to a local news channel, and there, like a punch to the gut, was her frozen image on the screen. Bella shyly smiling beside Ethan at the gala dinner under the cruel headline in bold letters. "Housekeeper poses as VIP and fools millionaire heir." Bella collapsed to her knees on the worn-out rug, the tears finally breaking through the dam of her strength. "Auntie, forgive me. I never meant," she stammered, but the words were lost in sobs. Rosa, with a trembling hand, just shook her head, her gaze full of pain and worry. "My girl, they are going to destroy us." The next day, still struggling to breathe amid the storm, Bella received the final call that would seal her fate. It was the manager of the Whitmore Hotel, his voice cold and impersonal on the other end of the line. "Miss Martinez, Following an emergency meeting of the management, we must inform you that your conduct has severely violated our internal policies. Effective immediately, your contract is terminated for cause. But she tried to argue, her voice breaking. We strongly advise you not to return to the hotel premises. Any attempt to do so may be treated as trespassing. The call ended abruptly, leaving Bella stunned, the phone slipping from her fingers and falling to the floor. In the days that followed, the small house became a fortress of shame. Journalists knocked at the door, neighbors whispered in the corridors, and social media turned into a cruel arena where strangers called her a gold digger, a fraud, and an opportunist. The people who used to smile at her at the local bakery now averted their eyes, as if she carried an invisible mark of disgrace. Ethan, for his part, drowned himself in his own bitterness. The images of Bella, the sweet words, the sincere smiles, all now seemed part of a dirty game orchestrated to take something from him. Enraged, he refused to even look at the unanswered messages Bella had desperately tried to send, the attempts to explain the confusion. She never wanted me. She only wanted what I could give, he muttered to himself, staring at the glass of whiskey in his hand, the luxurious apartment around him, feeling emptier than ever. Claire, always efficient, fed his resentment with half-truths and calculated silences, convinced she was protecting her boss from further humiliation. And Bella, alone in her tiny bedroom with the entire city pointing fingers at her, was beginning to understand that, to survive, she would need to find within herself a strength she never imagined she possessed. But at that moment, with her heart shattered and her soul laid bare, all she could do was curl up in her bed, hug her pillow, and whisper into the emptiness, "I just wanted a chance." The echo of those words would be lost in the night, but fate had not yet played its final card. The weather in Charleston had changed. The bright sun that once lit her path now seemed indifferent, hidden behind gray clouds that dragged the city into an early winter. The trees lining the old streets, once vibrant, now swayed darkly under the cold wind, as if whispering too about the shame that hovered over Bella. On that gray morning, Bella looked at herself in the cracked mirror of the small bathroom in her house, an old building with peeling walls and the smell of dampness soaked into the curtains. Her reflection looked like that of another person, sunken eyes, dark circles like bruises, and a weariness etched deep into her bones. She tied her dark brown hair into a hurried bun and put on a simple t-shirt and faded jeans, now her work clothes. The pearl gray dress, which had once made her feel like a princess, was tossed into the back of the closet, a cruel reminder of something that was never truly hers. In the narrow kitchen, Aunt Rosa coughed softly, wrapped in a worn blanket on a coffee-stained armchair. Bella served her a cup of hot tea with her calloused hands, setting it down in front of her with a fragile smile. "Drink a little, Auntie. It'll do you good," she said, her voice strained from exhaustion. Rosa gripped her hand tightly, tears welling in her eyes. "You don't deserve this, my girl," she whispered. "You are good. They just don't know how to see it." Bella pressed her lips together to keep from crying. She knew she had to be strong, even when everything inside her begged for just a moment of weakness. Every day after leaving her aunt in the care of a kind neighbor, Bella went out to work temporary jobs she found posted on bulletin boards at local markets. She washed dishes in the stifling basement of a modest restaurant, the kitchen's steam mixing with the sweat soaking her skin. She cleaned old houses where dust-covered furniture seemed to whisper stories of lives that, unlike hers, had never been devoured by shame. Even while being stared at, even hearing the whispered words of contempt wherever she went, Bella kept her head held high. In front of the cracked mirror in the restaurant's bathroom where she worked, she looked at herself every day before leaving. "I am more than what they say. I know who I am," she would whisper, like a mantra against the world that now rejected her. On social media, the attacks continued. Cruel memes, grotesque photoshops, venomous comments. "The beautiful imposter," some said. The fortune hunter, others mocked. Pictures of her circulated as trophies of a city that had once seemed charming, but now revealed its cruel side. Amid it all, Bella refused to give interviews, to sell her story, or to seek revenge. She could have profited from the scandal, could have accepted the sleazy offers from sensationalist programs. But she did not. She still protected Ethan even now, when he was just a painful memory. Meanwhile, in the wealthiest, shiniest part of Charleston, Ethan was fighting his own silent battles. The apartment with wide windows and designer furniture felt colder, emptier than ever. The soft lights and Persian rugs no longer brought any comfort. The ticking of the wall clocks was his only constant companion during sleepless nights. Sitting on the dark leather couch, a forgotten glass of whiskey in hand, Ethan relived every gesture, every look from Bella. He tried to convince himself it had all been part of a well-orchestrated game. But the harder he tried to harden his heart, the more her image appeared, not as a schemer, but as the shy young woman who nervously smiled when the seaside breeze tousled her hair. Doubts began corroding his certainties. One afternoon, while reviewing financial reports with Claire, he could not resist. "You investigated every detail about her, right?" he asked suddenly, his voice low and suspicious. Claire hesitated for a second, a nearly imperceptible second, but one that Ethan caught. "Of course," she answered quickly. Everything was confirmed. But inside him something stirred, a discomfort he could no longer ignore. "Something's wrong with this story," he murmured to himself later, gazing out at the city beyond the windows. "Something doesn't add up." And for the first time since the scandal, Ethan did not feel anger. He felt remorse. But like the sudden storms that sweep through the South without warning, he still did not know that the truth he was slowly starting to suspect was much deeper and more painful than he could ever imagine. Charleston continued its slow, melancholic rhythm, as if the city itself carried the weight of what was yet to come. The historic streets with their wrought iron balconies and the scent of wild magnolias in the air seemed suspended in a time where truth and lies danced silently together. Bella, in her quiet routine of work and caring for her aunt, barely noticed the whisper starting to spread through the city. She lived like a shadow, moving between distrustful glances and closed doors, sustained only by the invisible strength of her dignity. But not everyone had stayed silent in the face of injustice. In a small cafe away from the tourist center, Mary Jenkins, a former employee of the Whitmore Hotel, watched Bella's life being destroyed with growing indignation. Mary, a middle-aged woman with gray hair tied in a simple bun and hard eyes that had seen much in the world of the rich and powerful, could no longer stand the silence. She knew the truth. She had been there on that fateful afternoon, had seen the uniform mix-up, had heard the whispers from the management. She knew that Bella had never planned anything, that it had all been a series of mistakes and rushed judgments. Sitting at a table in the cafe, Mary gripped her coffee cup tightly and faced the local reporter sitting across from her, a young man with bright eyes and a recorder in hand. "I saw it all," she said, her voice deep and full of conviction. The girl only wanted to help her sick aunt. It was the hotel that created the confusion, and then used her as a scapegoat to save their own image. The reporter leaned forward, eyes attentive. "Do you have proof of this?" he asked. Mary smiled bitterly. You didn't need proof, it was in her eyes, in the way she tried to disappear among the guests. She wasn't a schemer, she was just a scared girl. Determined, Mary gave her statement on video and provided testimony from other colleagues who had also witnessed the events. Within 24 hours, the recording went viral on social media. The video showed the image of Mary, serious and firm, recounting the behind-the-scenes events of the night of the scandal. Her voice echoed through thousands of cell phones, televisions, and computers all over Charleston, and so the truth began to emerge from the shadows. In Ethan's luxurious loft, notifications exploded on his phone about the new revelation. Claire, paler than ever, rushed into the office where he was reviewing paperwork, trying to hide her nervousness behind a mask of professionalism. "We have a problem," she said, placing the tablet in front of him. Ethan frowned and pressed play. With every word Mary spoke, the color drained from Ethan's face. The defenses he had built around his heart crumbled like sandcastles before the tide of truth. He remembered the pearl gray dress, Bella's shy manner, the terror he had seen in her eyes when she tried, desperately, to find a way to explain. "My God," Ethan murmured, pushing the chair back and running his hands through his hair in a gesture of pure desperation. "What have I done?" Claire tried to intervene, her voice sounding anxious. "Ethan, we only wanted to protect you. We couldn't risk your name, your reputation." He glared at her, his grayish-blue eyes burning with rage and guilt. "Protect me!" he exploded, leaping to his feet. "You destroyed the life of an innocent woman, and I helped you do it." Claire stepped back, seeing for the first time the strong, confident man shattering before her. Ethan grabbed the tablet again, rewatched the video, Mary's words hammering against his conscience. "She tried to tell me. I saw it. I felt it." His voice broke, hoarse with regret. "And I pushed her even deeper into the abyss." Silence fell heavy in the office. Outside, the city carried on, oblivious to the pain now consuming Ethan Whitmore. But for him, there was no turning back. He knew he had to do something. He had to fight, even if it was already too late. And above all, he had to ask for forgiveness, knowing that forgiveness might be the one thing Bella could never give him. The afternoon fell over Charleston with a melancholic splendor. The sky was a tapestry of golden and reddish clouds, reflecting off the old mansions and the brick sidewalks worn down by time. The moist sea breeze spread the scent of salt and wildflowers, while the shadows of the ancient trees stretched out like arms trying to hold on to what was already slipping away into the horizon. And it was in that setting, where every sigh of the city seemed filled with memories, that Ethan Whitmore stepped out of the car. He was not dressed in his usual perfectly tailored suit, nor did he carry the shield of arrogance he had worn for so long, without even realizing it. He wore dark jeans, a simple shirt, and the devastated expression of a man who had crossed a desert inside himself. Before him, at the center of a dusty lot, stood the ruins of an old historic house. And among broken planks, paint cans, and scattered tools, there she was, Bella. She wore a loose t-shirt stained with dust and white paint, and worn jeans that clung simply to her legs. Her messy bun barely held the loose strands of her dark brown hair, and her face, still sweaty from the work, radiated a raw, almost wild beauty. Every movement she made, hammering, painting, cleaning, was a silent prayer for reconstruction, not just of walls, but of her own life. Ethan felt his heart tighten, each beat a plea not to run away. He moved across the uneven ground, the sound of his steps muffled by loose dust. As he got closer, he could hear Bella's shy laughter as she helped a child paint a piece of wood, a laugh that seemed to light up even the heaviest shadows of his regret. When she saw him, the transformation was immediate. The spontaneous joy vanished. The brush fell from her hand, splattering the ground with sparse drops of white paint. The hazel brown eyes that had once hypnotized him now cut through him like blades. "You shouldn't be here," Bella said, her voice low, sharp, her breathing quickened by surprise and the pain that still throbbed in every word. Ethan stopped a few steps away from her, his face twisted in an expression of a man carrying a weight much greater than himself. "I know," he said, his voice hoarse and sincere, "but I had to see you. I had to say what I should have said long ago." Bella crossed her arms over her chest as if trying to shield herself from an invisible storm. "There's nothing left to say, Ethan. What was broken between us can't be fixed with words," she murmured, her voice thick with bitterness. The volunteers and onlookers began to gather, forming a small, silent circle, not daring to interrupt. Everyone could feel they were about to witness something rare, a true plea for redemption. And then, in a gesture that made the murmurs cease, Ethan dropped to his knees before her, right there in the dirt, stained with paint and sweat. The man who once stood over million-dollar contracts, gala parties, and empty applause now knelt before the woman who had taught him what was real. "I didn't come here to ask you to forget what you suffered," he said, his voice trembling with emotion, "nor to try to erase the scars I caused." Ethan raised his eyes, grayish-blue and brimming with tears, shining under the last golden rays of the sun. "I came to ask you to allow me, at least, to try to be worthy of what you represent." Bella remained still, her heart at war. Part of her wanted to scream, to cry, to hit him until he felt every piece of the pain she had endured. But another part, the part that still carried the faint flame of hope, just watched, silent. "I let myself be blinded," he continued. "I let my pride speak louder than my heart. I let fear decide for me, and in doing so, I lost you, before I even understood who you really were." Bella swallowed hard, feeling the tears burn in her eyes, but refusing to let them fall so easily. "You destroyed everything, Ethan," she said in a broken voice. "You destroyed the little I had. My dignity, my hope, my faith in people." The silence that followed those words was so absolute that even the wind seemed to hush. Ethan, still on his knees, lowered his head. "I know," he whispered, "and that's why I'm not here to ask you to love me again. I'm here to ask that, one day, if it's possible, you forgive me." He stayed there, motionless, without rushing, without demands. Just waiting. Bella closed her eyes for a moment, letting the breeze touch her sweaty, marked face. She knew that forgiving was not easy. She knew that trusting again would be even harder. But she also knew that true power did not lie in punishing those who hurt her. It lay in deciding who she wanted to be. And maybe choosing to be free from the pain was the first step to rebuilding not just the old abandoned house in front of her, but also her own heart. But at that moment, Bella still did not have an answer, and Ethan, for the first time in his life, accepted waiting. He would wait as long as it took. He would accept even if the answer was silence. The Charleston heat at the beginning of that summer felt different. It was not just the heavy air rising from the old asphalt, or the sweet smell of magnolias carried by the wind. It was something invisible in the air, as if the city itself knew that something important was about to bloom. Bella walked across the newly renovated grounds of the Raises de Charleston Foundation, her steps firm on the earth, still scented with fresh wood and new paint. The white walls, restored by hand by her and other volunteers, now reflected the golden light of the sunset, as if each brick breathed hope. She wore light jeans, splattered with blue paint that no strong soap could remove, and a wrinkled white cotton blouse from a long day of work. Her light brown skin, slightly flushed from the heat, glowed with tiny drops of sweat, and her hazel brown eyes reflected a good kind of tiredness, the kind that comes from building something that truly matters. Sitting on the porch of the main house with a bottle of water beside him and the sleeves of his linen shirt rolled up to his elbows, Ethan watched her. The wind messed up his dark blonde hair, and for the first time in a long while, there was real serenity in his gaze. He no longer saw her as a trophy, nor as a chance for public redemption. He saw her as she truly was. A woman who, even wounded, had chosen to rise. A woman who turned pain into strength and abandonment into purpose. When Bella approached, he stood up slowly, as if afraid to scare away a moment too fragile to be rushed. "You never stop, do you?" he said, smiling slightly, his voice hoarse with contained emotion. Bella dropped the toolbox to the ground and wiped her forehead with the back of her hand, smiling back, a small but sincere smile. "There's a lot to do," she replied, looking around proudly, "and a lot of people to help." Ethan took a step closer, the sunset light drawing golden lines across their faces. "I want to be part of it," he said, with a firmness that came from deep within his soul. Not as a sponsor, not as a boss, as a partner, as someone who believes in everything you are. Bella lowered her eyes for a moment, his words resting softly against her chest. "It took you a while to understand," she said, in a sweet tone that still carried the bitter memory of everything they had lived. "It took me a while," Ethan admitted with a sad smile. "But some things only pain can teach." The silence between them was dense but comfortable, a silence full of words that no longer needed to be spoken. And then, with a natural gesture, Ethan extended his hand. "Let's build something that lasts," he said, his voice low and intense. "Something no one can destroy." Bella looked at that hand, the same hand that once had been part of her deepest hurt, now extended like a promise of something new, something pure. She placed her hand in his, feeling the warmth of his skin, the sincere firmness of his touch. "Together," she murmured. "Together," Ethan repeated, sealing that silent pact. And so the Raises to Charleston Foundation was born. They started small, 3 improvised rooms in an old abandoned school, half a dozen wary, hungry for opportunity young people, some old desks, donated school supplies, and an unshakable faith in the power of second chances. Bella taught hospitality, tourism, and small business management. Ethan gave entrepreneurship workshops, always careful never to place himself above anyone else. Mornings were filled with noisy classes and shy laughter. Afternoons with endless renovations and dreams rewritten in bricks and paint. And evenings with long conversations on the porch, where Bella and Ethan spoke about future plans, the scars they carried, and about love, the kind of love that grew silently but unshakably. One night, sitting side by side on the porch steps, watching the distant city lights flicker, Bella leaned her head on his shoulder. "Sometimes I'm still afraid," she confessed, her voice tight with emotion, "that all this will disappear, like it was just a beautiful dream." Ethan wrapped his arm around her, pulling her gently closer. "It's not a dream," he said, his voice warm against her hair. "It's real, because we built it with the only thing the world can't buy, the truth." They stayed like that, in silence, listening to the distant sound of the river and the cicadas singing in the trees. And in that moment, they knew, with the certainty that only pain and rebirth can teach, that a person's worth is not measured by the status they show, but by the truth they carry in their heart. And for the first time in a long while, they were at peace, finally free, finally whole. And so, what did you think of this story? Leave your rating from 0 to 10 in the comments. I would love to know how much this story touched you. If you enjoyed it, do not forget to like, share it with those who also love emotional stories, and of course, subscribe to the channel so you do not miss any new stories. And before you go, I want to invite you to watch another story I have picked for you. It's even more intense, full of emotion and overcoming obstacles, and I am sure it will touch your heart. I'll be waiting for you there.